The second that AI makes a machine utopia possible where we can just sit back and relax and not have to worry about money and we can just all pursue our little dreams, I don't care what happens. But as long as it maintains that the capitalist standard for AI is to provide the wealthy with access to skill without providing the skilled access to wealth, your generation specifically is going to be doomed.
Damn, that just hit. Welcome back to Inside the Business. I am Jamison Borden, and today we're talking with the Michael.
What up?
I'm looking forward to this young buck talking with one of the raging boomers on the team. Not to diss AJ or anything.
No, it's fine. I'm old. My bones are brittle. I'm basically like a 90-year-old golden retriever just trying his best. But we're here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, bud.
Yeah,
I'm very
it's
excited.
It's gonna be a good conversation.
It's gonna be great.
Like you've brought a wealth of knowledge into the team so far.
A wealth of knowledge.
It's been super interesting, but we're gonna dive deeper.
You're gonna dive deeper.
So we're just gonna jump right into this. What has your best day on set ever been?
Best day on set ever been, like on a film set or any set? Because I've done like live events.
Just like best day in your career.
Best day in my career. Okay, I like this. I like this question. Because I've had a lot of interesting days. I've had a lot of days that I could bitch and moan about.
Yeah.
That's part of the fun of working in production is like commiserating with people.
Oh, definitely. Like
every
taking
day,
pleasure in the pain.
Every day sucks.
The long days.
Every day sucks. That's the important thing to know. I want to make it perfectly clear. If you are working in production and you're getting off of shoot days feeling like you want to die or stab someone or start robbing grocery stores and small businesses to get by instead. You're not alone. Yeah, that's how you feel in the moment. I mean, you can feel amazing on set. I want to get that clear too. Like I felt phenomenal working on sets just in general. They're super fast paced, stimulating, a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And like depending on the people you're working with, like every project's different and it can be fun, it can be shitty, but by and large it's, a spectacular experience just because it's super stimulating just across the board. There's always something to do, something to see, someone to watch, someone making you laugh, someone pissing you off. At the end of the day, you have stories to tell, right? So it's never a bad thing, especially because in hindsight, you have these memories and these experiences, and it's great. Picking a singular day out is challenging, but I think, it's not during like my working years. It wasn't a paid day.
Okay.
But the best day of my career working as a film and video professional was probably back in college. I had a short film project for, I forget what the class was. It was narrative development, something along those lines. But I had written a script called R.J. Baxter's Swagnificent Odyssey.
Okay. I like
and it was by and large like a reductive sort of parody / homage to like the college party movie.
Okay.
And we don't need to get into the details of the narrative or nothing, but the climax of the movie is the central protagonist is at this like college house party with a bunch of friends, and the cathartic climax of the movie is they, for some reason or another, decide that they're all going to go streaking. And so I had put together a shoot that was comprised of mostly friends and like film school peers.
Oh God.
To get together for this house party sequence.
Yeah.
And by the grace of God and college-aged hubris, most of these people willfully like got completely naked.
No shit. No.
And this is we're talking downtown Milwaukee.
Yeah. Oh, so it was right around here.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the middle of January.
Okay.
It's the dead of winter.
Chilly.
It's like 14 degrees outside. Everyone goes stark naked, and they're standing around in one of our friends' living rooms. It was the same house that we shot the house party at.
Okay.
So we got the house party sequence done. everyone's standing around, stark naked. And you've been in a room with people. You've been at a party.
Yeah.
I assume.
No, actually.
You've never
I'm not
partied.
a party guy.
You've never partied.
No,
You've never been. Your family's never gotten together with a bunch of. You've never been in a room with
not
20
like a
plus
college
people.
party.
Does not. I mean, it doesn't matter. But you've been in a room with like 20
Sure.
people fully clothed, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
The smell is very different when the clothes come off.
Is it actually?
I'll tell you that much. In a weird way.
Does it get a little more like moist in the
The humidity rises. The humidity rises. But point being that it wasn't seeing a bunch of 20-somethings naked in a living room that made it the best day, because ultimately everyone was anxious, excited, scared. What we were doing was technically illegal.
Sure.
It was worth it all in the end because we won an award for artistic achievement from the Milwaukee Short Film Festival.
Just got to get naked.
But, they burst out of the house, stark naked in the middle of winter. They ran
Are they just going up and down the street?
eighth
or
of a
like
mile
what?
down the street.
Really?
Yeah, we
Okay.
had a follow car set up that I was driving. We had our cinematographer in the trunk of the car just shooting on an A7S.
Okay.
And, we got the shot in a single take.
Nice.
We didn't have to do it twice. I don't think that we could have gotten away with doing it twice because the neighbors almost certainly saw what had
I'm
happened.
sure some passerbys had to have witnessed this.
But
There's
it was
no
like
way.
2 a.m. You
Okay.
know, and we played it as smart as we could. Luckily, no cops showed up. But, it was exciting. It was fun. But really, the reason why I think that day stands out for me is specifically because it was the moment that I realized that no matter how absurd my idea is or how big or odd the ask might be, that if I put a team together and we work hard and collaborate, we can make those weird, wacky, bizarre, out-of-pocket things happen.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's the kind of thing, like, we never went streaking for fun in college. That wasn't in the realm of reality for us. But to tell the
That makes
story,
it even more impressive that people were just like willing to do that.
right? And to this day, like I still have friends who talk about it, and they're like, "Well, maybe it would be really fun for us to get together and have a reunion where we all just reenact that scene and go streaking for the fuck of it." And that's I mean, we haven't done it yet. If they want
It's
to,
in the works.
That's fine.
Essentially.
But it's that collaborative spirit. And that was the first time in my career where I was like, people trust me enough to follow my lead to the point where they will get completely naked, exposing themselves to the elements, to the public, etc. And they're putting their faith in me and this project. And I'm glad that we, ultimately won an award. I don't think of it as my award, but the team's award.
Yeah.
Because that project wouldn't be what it is if it wasn't for everyone's faith in me. And that's just, as a director, as a producer, as a project leader in general, that was super life-affirming.
Oh, definitely. And that was earlier on, right?
Yeah, that was
That was one of your first few years, like probably your first, 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, I would have been like 26, I think, when we made it. But I entered film school late after, being in college for my English major and my literary theory stuff beforehand. So,
but I'm sure like even early on, like that's definitely a huge confidence boost.
Yeah.
Like, I'm in my second year and I feel like I've grown a lot, but there's still just like way more to go. I can only imagine how much of a difference a bunch of people streaking down the street for a shot would have made.
Yeah, I mean, and it's one of those things where you gotta take those big swings when you can. And honestly, it's a lot easier to go into those kind of things, especially when there's no money attached to it, when you're young and capable of, I mean, that's what it is, right? Like, these were a bunch of young kids in
We're
college
just throwing stuff around.
who were just throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. They were down for anything as long as they wouldn't put them in like immediate danger.
Yeah.
And they just wanted to make art, right? Like that's the benefit of youth. Like, we never stop wanting to make art, but life's constraints become more prevalent.
Definitely.
When we approach our late 20s, early 30s, now we're actually grown-ass adults and we have fewer excuses for fucking up and making mistakes that we can't undo as easily, right? The excuse of youth is a great
It is a great
get
excuse.
out of jail free card.
It really is.
You know, like I can blame any of my past mistakes on the fact that I was just a dumb 20-something-year-old.
Yeah.
You know, I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So if I screw up or I accidentally publicly embarrass someone or make a movie that puts someone in a compromising position,
that's your mistake and you have to live with that.
Yeah,
Like,
and I'm risking tarnishing that relationship and, you know, my own reputation. You know, those are things that you have to be mindful of. So, yeah, best day of my career, just for the collaboration and the faith that was given to me, the good faith that was given to me. And, you know, honestly, it's that kind of high that you keep chasing.
Oh, for sure.
Is getting back to that place of that, you know, high stakes collaboration where your heart is racing and you're, you know, you can feel your heart beating in the back of your throat because this shot means so much, or like there's something at risk, or people are counting on
the line,
you. You know, so yeah,
it's a good feeling to have. I feel like just as creatives, most creatives generally tend to work the best when like our backs are against the wall like that.
Yeah, I mean, we're it's a legion of procrastinators that run the arts, right? Like so, and it's because we all thrive under pressure.
Yeah.
Right? Like we don't postpone things to the last minute because we're lazy. We postpone things to the last minute because that's when our brain kicks into high gear and we're functioning at our highest.
Yeah.
You know, so
I find myself being very dialed when I have to get something done last minute, but it's very enjoyable. No, that's awesome. Like I was expecting it to be like a paid project. That was going to be like the answer, but like that's super cool.
I mean, I've had cooler experiences on paid projects,
definitely.
You know?
But I think like that's something that you definitely look back and you're just very proud of it. I mean, I think back to like when I first started, like my first trip was just like going to Mexico to shoot my first wedding. Like I had no clue what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But it's like you get there and then like, again, it's just like shooting stuff. We're throwing stuff around. We're going to see what sticks. And then like eventually you get it done. But just like that whole experience, even now I look back on that and I always like, I think about it very frequently still. And I'm just like, what on earth was I thinking? It's like 18-year-old just going across the world by himself. I'm going to shoot this wedding. And it's like, we'll just see how it works. It's like, I don't have much else going for me.
But
so
that's
it's like,
an opportunity that a lot of people don't get, you know? It
was a great experience.
Get called to travel across the world, you know, to do a shoot. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's the perfect place to start.
Yeah, definitely. I'm thinking like, was that a long day too that you were doing this shoot? If you guys were out there like in the dead of night? I'm kind of working towards like, the question I'm wondering is, young buck, and you've been obviously much more experienced in the industry.
Yeah, we fucking get it, James.
But what is your perspective on these like super long days? Because I mean, I think as you said, we all kind of take pleasure in the pain, but I feel like I don't have too much else to do, and I love these like 12, 14, 16-hour days when they pop up. Like, what point are you at in your career and with your life? Like, how do those days feel to you?
That's a good question. I have always been of the opinion that the longest day on a good set pales in comparison to the
a short day on a miserable set,
crappiest day. Not even on a set, but like in an office, you know, or just at home.
That's true.
Like the time moves so much faster, and usually more enjoyably. At least, you know, again, it's a super stimulating environment.
Yeah.
So when you're on a 14-hour day, like yes, everyone hits that midday lull where it's like it's lunchtime.
We've got 7 or 8 hours of this.
Another 8 hours to get through that, literally. And because odds are is that if you're working on a passion project, like commercial sets are by and large pretty good, right? Most people are getting paid on a 10-hour timeline. Production gets paid on a 12-hour timeline. So as a rule, people try and keep projects tightened down to a 12-hour workday for the benefit of just not having to pay people overtime, right? Because overtime gets super expensive in production. There's no such thing as a bad long day on set if you are prepared. And that comes down to like everyone above the line and the logistics team making sure that there's a plan for everything.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's always stressful. It's just like the type of stress that you're dealing with.
Right.
Definitely.
So, I mean, no one likes to be on their feet for 16 hours. No one likes to be carrying hundreds of pounds of grip and electric equipment and camera gear for 15 to 18 hours, right? That's madness. That they are hard days. But next to nobody, I'm not going to say nobody, but nearly nobody works in this industry. You will be hard pressed to find someone on a commercial or narrative set that isn't there because they want to be.
Sure.
This is an industry of lunatics who loved a very specific craft and are delusional enough to
suffer through it.
Suffering through it. Because that glimmer of hope that they'll rise through the ranks and become a lead creative, or not everyone wants to be a lead creative, right? Some people legitimately, and this is the thing that blows my mind because I've always wanted to be a lead creative my entire career.
Okay, I don't. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this.
That's actually fascinating. That's great. I mean, and I know plenty of people who don't, right? At this point in my life, I know plenty of people who don't, who are just happy to be working in a creatively stimulating career path.
Yeah.
Right? And the industry is built on the backs of those people. The creative leadership accounts for, like, we're literally the 1% of the industry.
Yeah.
Right? The rest is teamsters and crew members and assistants and editors and costumers and caterers and people who make the world go round, while the rest of us are sitting behind our MacBooks typing up scripts that will never see the light of day until we catch a break that no one asked us to catch, right? Like, it's all masturbation on our end, while everyone else is working as collaborators to fulfill those masturbatory visions of the lead creatives, right? So, I mean, but the point is, people are there because they want to be. And yes, people get screwed over. There are bad days. There are physically taxing days. There are accidents that happen on sets. There are days where, whether the talent's off or the director's off or something with the set is wrong or there's a technical issue, like, there are setbacks that screw the day over and make a lot of effort go to pot. At the end of the day, everyone's getting paid for that time regardless. And if something went wrong, odds are that you're going to have to make up that time either with overtime or another day. So you're getting paid more money, right? And we're in an industry where, unless you're in-house somewhere or you're working directly within the studio system, work isn't really reliable. There's no safety net. So, let me put it this way. When I was PAing, there was a mentality among the seasoned PAs that you count down the clock until you hit that 12th hour.
Okay.
Because if on the shot list and on the schedule, you're nowhere near wrapping by the 11th hour, you're almost guaranteed to go into overtime. The second overtime hits, if I'm getting paid, back then it was like $250 a day on a commercial set and like $175 on a narrative shoot.
What does back in the day mean?
We're talking like 8 to 10 years ago.
That's pretty good.
Now I think commercial standard is closer to $300 a day for a PA and like closer to like $225 for narratives. But again, we're getting paid the least on set comparatively.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even close. The next person up is making literally double what a PA is making. And PAs already have the longest days built in at 12 hours assumed. The second that the clock starts ticking on overtime, why in God's name would I work faster if I'm literally making like $60 an hour at this point?
Yeah.
every minute that I'm still on set. At that point, I've already worked a 12-hour day. What's a 13th hour day?
So you're just concerned about finishing out the shot list or whatever you need to at that point. But it's like,
I mean, at that point, like, we are literally just worrying. I mean, from a production standpoint, we're just worrying about making the day, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's getting paid overtime, and the people who are making $600 a day, their overtime's a lot more handsome than the PAs, right? So anyone who bitches about a long day, sure, it was a long, taxing day. It's mentally draining. It's creatively exhausting. It's physically exhausting. Like, I'm not saying that they aren't hard days. But what I am saying is that if you've planned the day correctly, and it's organized chaos, it's organized distress.
Yeah.
Right? We assume these things. And the fact of the matter is that people who work production consistently are making a pretty handsome living to the point where they can afford to be unemployed for half of the year.
Oh,
Who else can say that? Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, they're not only are they getting paid an average of $500 a day, they are also getting free meals. Do you know how easy it is to save money when you don't have to buy groceries for most of your working life? That's insanity. No one else on the planet,
That's bonuses
no
right
industry can claim that as a standard, right? It's literally just media production. So those long days, hell, I want to go
do those
past 12 hours. I want to get second meal, right? I'm guaranteed lunch. A courtesy breakfast is pretty standard. If we're going into overtime, they're getting a second meal. I'm getting free dinner on top of everything and overtime. Why the hell would I complain about that? So, I don't know. My that's a really long answer to your question, but at the end of the day, a long day is a blessing, especially in an industry where, like, the next day of work is not guaranteed.
Sure. I suppose, it's never guaranteed here. Never.
So,
as you're in your experience, like, PAing, how have things changed from the start? Because I mean, I've never really done any kind of PA work.
Sure.
But maybe a little bit. But like, you're kind of just helping out wherever you can. But like, how have things changed on a lot of the sets that you've worked on from start then versus now?
Pay, obviously. Like I said, it was like commercial standard was like $200 back in 2018. And it's now very suddenly closer to like 300, if not more, for commercial standard. But commercial always pays better than narrative. And narrative standard has gone from, again, like 175 for a 12-hour day to closer to like 225.
Okay.
So people are getting paid better. And a lot of that has to do with let's just call a spade. The production industry is notoriously toxic and abusive to all kinds of people. And by and large, that's due to studio exploitation. The rich want to get richer, and artists are expensive. Creative labor is pricey. It's just true.
Yeah.
Specialized. Not everyone has a creative mind. Not everyone has a creative mind that can be shaped and structured in a way that's conducive to a working business day, right? Like, that's even more rare. So I'm doing it again. I cornered myself into forgetting what the fuck I was talking about, Jamison.
How has the industry changed?
How's it changed, and how are things
I
better?
know, because a lot of what
Yeah.
we do here with content management is like, I think a lot of creatives like hate the social media stuff, but like, it's just kind of a necessary evil nowadays. But what are your thoughts? Because that's something that was definitely ushered in by my generation, like, no question.
Yeah, no, you guys are
The
killing media.
youngsters.
Thank you for completely ruining the longevity of my career. No, it's fine. It's fine. We'll be fine. AI will save us. It won't ruin the industry at all. And you guys definitely didn't bastardize cinema and everything with your
absolutely not.
TikToks and instant gratification culture and ADHD.
God forbid we get a good story once in a while.
Yeah. No, I think for PA specifically, the main thing is the pay and the respects to, like, the unions. What I was getting at is that the unions, everything went to hell in a hat box. It's notoriously abusive, so a lot of problems started coming to light. The union started making demands of the studio system to
just improve things and pay people fairly and make sure that their rights as creative laborers were protected against AI, against abuses from producers, to make sure that like certain standards were being set and guaranteed, making sure that streaming services were going to be playing by studio rules and union rules and not using the nebulous nature of the internet as an out for, oh, we don't know how this actually applies to the studio system. We don't know how streaming actually works for media production. And nonsense. It all works the same way. You have your profit margins. You're paying the same amount of money for the productions. You have to pay people. So having those unions raise all that fuss led to, because a PA by and large is a non-union position. It can be under the DGA, but DGA production assistants are very rare. The DGA is the Directors Guild of America.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I apologize. I saw you staring at me the way that a cow stares at an oncoming train, and I had to correct myself. So yeah, the Directors Guild is, so PAs fall under the Assistant Director Department, the AD department.
Okay.
The ADs are in charge of the PAs, technically, and assistant directors are union positions with the Directors Guild of America.
Okay.
The same guild that represents like the directors.
Sure.
So because PA falls under the protections of the assistant directors, they have started, whether or not the PAs are union status, they are trying to apply union respects to all positions. Because, again, people recognize, especially in this day and age where PAs can actually voice their opinions and thoughts on social media, and a lot of ugly stuff can come to light if people just get screwed over enough times.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that there aren't other reasons why people have started listening to and like respecting PAs more. But again, it just comes down to a matter of treatment on set. PAs
people have been abused way too much.
Right. And I think as a society, we're just sort of moving beyond that and growing up and, treating people less as the help just because they're making less and have less experience, and more as less experienced collaborators.
Yeah.
Right. And also PAs do work the longest, hardest days, and they do break their asses all the time, and they have to help everyone. So if you want a PA to do a good job for you when you need their help, you should probably treat them right. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that just there's been slow and steady progress just in the terms of the way PAs get treated since when I first started out. And that's a great thing because by and large, they're still taken for granted,
Yeah, I would agree. Outside of the PAing, it's easy to like focus on these trends because it's definitely, there have been a lot of downward trends over the last 5 years, 6 years. Like, what are things that younger generations of these creatives, like my age, what are things that we are bringing in, if any, that you think are beneficial or that are helpful?
No, I mean,
none.
I want to be cynical. I do.
Absolutely do it. If
my
there's
instinct
nothing
is
good
to be cynical.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is that it's been true since day one. This goes back generations, right? Young people have more energy. Young people have new ideas. Being untrained and inexperienced is a blessing and a curse, right? Because
it makes you malleable.
And you are in a place where you can pick up new information easily, but also the ideas presented by young people who have yet to be influenced by others puts them in a position to be at their absolute most creative, right? Like there's two schools of thoughts that you could run with here, and one is obviously like the more experience you have, the more educated you are, the more influences you can draw from, the more nuanced and polished your work can be.
Oh, of course.
But I also kind of call bullshit on that specifically because at the end of the day, what you're really doing is just reshaping and combining ideas.
Other ideas that you've already seen.
Exactly.
Whereas young people, by and large,
Bring in
come
something
in,
fresh.
and it's chaos. It's
Yeah.
chaos. That freshness is chaos, but that chaos is also how we get the absurdist comics of today.
Yeah.
Alt comedy wouldn't exist without young people just completely subverting what was already out there.
Oh God, yeah.
You know, in terms of just like technologies and creativity and thinking about the way things get shot, I think that the younger generations will always come at things from a fresher perspective. That's not always a good thing. It's not always a good thing to just come in with unbridled chaos without.
But it provides diversity.
Yeah.
And just differentiation.
I mean, there's a
Yeah.
healthy balance, of a fuck you attitude.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
Like, at a certain point, you risk being just a dipshit kid who has an issue with authority and just is living through their ego.
Sure.
And that's fine. The ego of youth is underrated as hell. It's really, again, easy to be cynical and sort of like chastise smart-ass kids who think they know better than everyone else with no
Yeah.
real life experience. But again, I look back at some of my writing from late high school, early college, and that stuff was infinitely better than the stuff that I'm predisposed to write now. And, my brain is a little bit crustier. I'm a little more tired.
Yeah.
I can't stay up until 3 a.m. smoking weed and drinking scotch and just hammering out word after word and page after page and, like, looking back at it the next day and being like, oh, this is actually solid. Now I'm tired, man. I'm tired all the goddamn time, and
Sure.
I can't stress this enough. But the energy of youth is not to be taken for granted.
You're welcome.
I seriously though, like I'm not playing. Like,
Yeah.
I miss being able to stay up until 3 a.m. and wake up at 5 the next day and feel
God.
bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Yeah.
I can't do it anymore. I cannot burn the midnight oil, and those used to be my most creative hours, was between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. was when
Yeah.
I would get my best stuff done. So a little bit of that ego, a little bit of that hubris, it belongs there. It needs to be there. Like, young creatives need to have a little bit of that fuck you old man mentality.
Sure.
Just because, I mean, that's rock. That's rock and roll. That's punk. That's fucking jazz, baby.
Yeah.
People have been saying fuck you to the man for a long time, and it's because we get old and we don't let go of our old ideas and we reject the idea of modernity. We reject modernity and embrace tradition because it's a lot easier to do that, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot easier to romanticize the past and say, this is how things used to be done and it was just better. And sometimes
It's
that's
true. Yes.
Sometimes that's true. AI is the goddamned devil, and it's going to ruin this entire industry. We are not going to have jobs as we understand them, especially in media production in the next 10 years. We are fucked, and everyone who is watching this is actively subscribing to it. We know it's happening, and we're contributing to the problem, acting like there's nothing that we can possibly do while still feeding the machine and saying, this will be fine. It'll be fine. And it's not. And it's not going to be fine. But what are you going to do about it? You're the young one. What are you going to do about it, Jamison? Or is the system...
the slightest of clues
Exactly.
yet.
The system has been positioned against you by people older than me who are going to be benefiting from those technologies, right?
Yeah.
And those technologies are being programmed by young and old people alike, right? And I'm not going to turn this into another like AI rant because I could do this for the rest of my life.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to stand on my soapbox and be the old dude who rejects these things.
We
right?
might just need a little bit more of the fuck you attitude.
You need a little bit more of the fuck you attitude, and you also need to start like stomping your feet and pumping your fists
Yeah.
and saying these things may be inescapable, but just because we can't stop them doesn't mean we can't redirect the momentum,
Yeah.
right? Like, your generation has a cultural and moralistic obligation, because this is what I'm going to tell you. You're 20 years old?
Yes.
Okay. You've got an entire future ahead of you. The environment's fucked. The economy's fucked. Society's collapsing around you. We're coming up against one of the scariest presidential elections in American history. You are in a very unique position where your generation and people of your age can either sit by like the dipshit millennials of
let it
my
happen.
generation
Yeah.
and just let it happen and complain and let that be your superpower, the ability of observation without being able to actually change anything because we were conditioned to be afraid.
Yeah.
Or you can look at the technology, say, yes, this is inescapable. This is going to self-perpetuate and grow and become something. But let me put it this way. You cannot escape the fact that you live in a society that inherently requires you to earn a living. You will have to probably make money for the rest of your life in order to keep a roof over your head. I know I definitely will.
Yeah.
If your generation doesn't say, fuck you, old man, to the people who want these technologies to outmode certain careers just because it makes certain jobs easier or faster, at the end of the day, the core job of this technology is to provide skill to the wealthy while removing access of wealth to the skilled.
Yeah.
You are skilled. You are surrounded by people who are skilled. The people who are wealthy are going to stay wealthy. That's never going to change. The question is, do we allow it to become an issue of them becoming so wealthy while we become so poor and just nerf ourselves entirely into just accepting that, oh, well, I can just tell the TV to invent me a new movie because I gave it a prompt and that's the new age of media production? Or do we really fight this stuff and say, no, we have to turn our backs on the instant gratification culture that we've allowed to flourish over the past 10 years?
Yeah, definitely needs to change.
You guys are going to determine that because the millennials, like me, sat back and just let these things happen while complaining and acting like there was nothing we could do. We could have burned more things down. We could have caused a bigger ruckus. We could have fought the machine the way that the rebels of the 60s and 70s did. We did not, because we were conditioned to just be a bunch of pussyfooting cowards who became keyboard warriors and were very complacent, believing that if we voiced our opinions and exercised our free speech, that things would change.
Yeah.
Society and progress are built on a foundation of blood and bones, Jamison. That is the fact of the matter. And I'm not telling you to go cause violence and do harm to others.
This is a good reminder.
But I am telling you that if you just sit by with the rest of your generation, that AI is going to take over. You are not going to be working to the capacity you're currently working in the next 10 years. In 10 years, you're going to be younger than I am right now.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Keep that in mind. In 10 years, you will be younger than I am right now. If you want to ensure your future, you have to actively coordinate with people of your age group to ensure your futures, because we live in a capitalist society, and capitalism demands that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. You are right now sitting in a kind of middle place between those two worlds. You can either join the evil or join the poor. I know which one sounds a lot better. It's a lot better to be on the winning team.
It is.
It's still evil, and it's still wrong. And the odds of you joining that team, it's like billionaire mentality, right? Like, why do people sympathize with billionaires? Well, because maybe one day you're not going to be a billionaire, brother.
Yeah.
Like, nothing you do is going to put you in the class system that supersedes the technologies that are going to push you down, right? You weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You just have an inherent amount of privilege that allows you to sit where you're sitting right now, doing a podcast as part of your day job. Fuck you. You have an obligation. Your entire generation, everyone has an obligation
back behind the camera
to fix these things. So that's my answer to that.
Do you think I bring that attitude to the table? Do I have a little bit of it? Like, what was your impression of me when you first met me?
My impression when I first met you was that you were not 20 years old. I thought that you were like 28, 29. You carry yourself like
Did I actually? Do you think I was
adult.
actually that old?
You carry yourself like a grown ass man.
Thank you. I try.
Yeah, but you do have like spunk and wit and charisma, and you are good at what you do. You're more talented than most 20-year-olds I knew back in my day. I'm going to blame that on technology, but also you have a great work ethic.
Sure.
Not everyone has that. But you definitely do. And I think that because you have that energy level and you have that kind of presence, that positions you in a place where people of your ilk will be predisposed to listen to someone like you and follow your lead. You know,
sure.
I think that maybe you don't want to be in a creative leadership position in the future, but I think that you have the stature and presence of someone who could potentially influence the opinions of others. I know that even in meetings that we have here at Rockrose, there have been instances where you've taken the reins in a meeting and led people who are, for all intents and purposes, twice your age in conversation that has been really productive. So I think that that's a great sign of the potential you have
Thank you.
to influence others.
Appreciate it.
And, still you have that young dude energy that sort of fuels that creativity, but you do a really good job of channeling it. If anything, I would say for the benefit of this conversation and what we've been talking about, what I've been talking about and ranting about and monologuing about, is you could have a little bit more fuck you.
Sure. Get a little
Not
more
at work.
wit.
Not at work necessarily,
Sure.
but in general.
Okay.
Because again, it's really easy to get lost in the confines of our own existences.
Yeah.
Right?
Would that be your biggest piece of advice to me?
My biggest piece of advice to you would be zoom out.
Okay.
Your
Big
life,
picture.
Your life is not your home. Your life is not your office. Your life is so much bigger than all of those things because your life is a part of a society that is composed of other lives.
people.
And all those lives are working subconsciously and consciously alike as one big collective hive mind. We are unwittingly all making decisions together. So the voices that come through are the ones that are going to influence that hive mind, right?
Sure.
It's so easy to look at politicians and celebrities, and there's like this cognitive disconnect. These are people of authority, and they just are. They got there, right? They're on TV. They're the voices on the screen, in our phones, on the radio. We hear them. We see them. They got there. It doesn't really matter how, but these are the authority figures. They got there as human beings who started in places not too dissimilar to where we're currently at.
Yeah. I guess speaking to that, how has media changed? Because, I mean, I've really only been involved or active in a small amount of it.
Yeah.
But how has it, from your perspective, changed over the last, 10 or 15 years? Basically, for the amount of my life that I could remember. How have things changed, and how have you seen that influence people?
I mean,
for better or worse?
15 years ago, we still had the first iPhone, I think.
2007. That's insane, yeah.
So
Not that I remember that day or anything, but...
So that's the biggest thing. I mean, that's the biggest thing, right? Because when I was a kid, we still had the internet. I was around for when the internet became sort of standardized.
Mm-hmm.
I was there for AOL and dial-up and all that stuff.
I don't know what that...
America Online.
Dial-up, I kind of know. AOL, no.
Regardless, I think the biggest turning point in media was the dawn of the smartphone. And that was right around when you would have been getting born.
Sure.
It started with the iPod Touch, and that rapidly turned into the iPhone, and that turned into Androids and smartphones as we know them. Mobile media is social media. Social media is modern day media.
Mm-hmm.
TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube, these things get more engagement every single day than network TV ever did. That's one of those changes that I talked about. Some things were better about tradition than not. The oversaturation of the marketplace has given everyone an opportunity to have a voice, right? And that's nice. The decentralization and removing of the gatekeepers for baseline media.
Sure.
The entry into media production is as simple as owning a phone now.
But do you think that makes the voices a lot less prominent? Each individual? Yeah.
Absolutely. It's the idea of if everyone's special, no one is.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone has a voice. Everyone has a story to tell. Not everyone is a good storyteller. Not
everyone's a star.
Has a good
As
voice.
we've discussed a lot before, yeah.
And not everyone's a star, 1,000%. But more importantly, not everyone is considerate of what they're creating or why, and we flood the market with mindless nonsense for the sake of stimulation, which inherently devalues the thoughtfulness and mindful practices of creativity that went into formerly mainstream media. Now, formerly mainstream media was always a commercial endeavor. TV only ever existed for the benefit of airing commercials in between breaks, right? Those shows were getting paid for by commercial sponsorships. That's just always been true. Movies, by and large, exist for the benefit of selling tickets, creating franchises, selling merchandise. There's always money to be made. But the value of the work being made was elevated simply for the fact that people needed to be more thoughtful. They needed to be more mindful. There were not algorithms and endless streams of data informing studios and marketing teams what the fastest and quickest way, the fastest and quickest is the same thing, but the fastest and most effective way to milk audiences for their dollars would be, right? We literally have this down to a science. There are programmers who just have built around the ideas of just baseline reward responses in psychology to reward us with a dopamine response for opening our phones. Like, that's been studied. That's just true. These things exist. The algorithms, these studies, these reward responses play directly into how people feel about larger, more important forms of media. I mean, all you have to do is look at the value of CGI in a feature film for Marvel movies today versus CGI for movies 10 years ago. It looks better 10 years ago. Now, how has technology gotten better while CGI looks worse? It's not an issue of technology. It's not an issue of ability. It's an issue of the turnaround. Studios want to crank things out
as fast as possible, as much as possible.
As long as it's good enough. It doesn't matter how good it looks.
Yeah.
It's about, is the IP going to sell merchandise? Do people care inherently about this franchise? Is there a built-in audience? Are people going to just, I mean, any Marvel movie is a perfect example. The second that Disney realized that there were millions of unmilked nerds sitting around at Comic-Con dying to see their favorite heroes in live action.
They just start cranking these things out.
They start cranking these things out. And the second that's live action, it's cool now. It's not a dorky cartoon. It's not a weird comic book. It's not an esoteric video game. These things
for a while
weren't
it was
for
good.
nerds anymore.
Yeah.
And for a while it was good. And the second that they saw how much money there was to be made and how big the demand was, and that people were willing to line up around the corner to get these tickets to go see these movies. Well, the demand drives the market. If the demand is there and there's a profit to be made, every executive wants to see a slightly higher profit margin every single fiscal quarter. How the fuck is that sustainable?
Yeah.
Good enough is no longer good enough unless we're talking about the actual quality of the product. Then good enough is good enough because all we have to do is kick that baby out of its crib so that someone will come and pick it up and pay you $10 to do so.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, I think that the instant gratification culture is inherently a curse on the industry.
It's horrible.
But there's always going to be people who are decrying that, which is why we have, the no longer underrated studios like A24 who champion the cinephile's ideal for the movie experience, right? And even that, ebbs and flows. Like, we don't need to gatekeep media, but if we don't, as a community, again, because a single person
will not make the difference.
Right.
Everyone needs to get together
I
to
can
say
sit here
no.
and say, like, this is bad, and we all know it. We all quietly know it. We sit there and we understand, but we still, every single one of us, myself
We don't
included,
do anything about it.
I scroll through my phone and mindlessly consume content every single day because I'm programmed just like everyone else. I resent myself. I feel gross about it. But I can't stop it, especially because society and the conversation kind of demands that I participate in it, right? So you can either be left out and be seen as a contrarian asshole, or you can be part of the mindless herd that hates itself quietly. That's a terrible dichotomy to exist in, So, and that's why I say, It starts with a voice, but if a voice can lead other voices to rise up and just say no, We subscribe to the stuff. We subscribe to the AI thing. We subscribe to the nature of media as it currently stands. We are all voting on this every single day by participating in it. If we decide unanimously, if we vote that this is bad, again, demand drives the market.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Demand drives the market. If the demand stops, if people say this isn't good, we don't want this, we care about people's livelihoods, we care about the endurance of the human soul through the act of creativity, we want people to be able to make a living as long as they are required to make a living. The second that AI makes a machine utopia possible where we can just sit back and relax and not have to worry about money and we can just all pursue our little dreams, I don't care what happens, but as long as it maintains that the capitalist standard for AI is to provide the wealthy with access to skill without providing the skilled access to wealth, your generation specifically is going to be doomed.
Damn, that just hit. That's true. Spoken like a true creative. We're going to wrap this up. All right, I got paid to do this podcast. I'm Jamison Borden. Michael, appreciate you
Thanks for
coming
having
on.
me.
This is a enlightening conversation.
Thanks for letting me rant. I'm happy to do it anytime.
Subscribe to Rockrose Productions, and we'll see you on the next episode of Inside the Business. Thanks for watching.